Good afternoon and good morning and good evening to everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us today for our third edition of our Threads of Collaboration event. We're so happy to have all of you. I'm sure you guys saw our speakers on the screen as we were kind of given the preview before we started. Also, just giving people a chance to come on for this session. There's a few of us here today, but we're happy to have each and every one of you. And we're looking forward to what will be a wonderful, substantive conversation. I'm excited about our speakers. Since we started this series last year, I'm really kind of looking to help share the stories of those who have successfully worked with artisans on the continent of Africa. I've learned so much. We've had so many enriching conversations, and we're happy to have this next session as part of that. In a moment, I'm going to introduce our speakers. As I said, I'm already very excited to hear from them, and I'll introduce them in a moment so that they can really get us into it because we're really here to hear from them and to engage with them. For those of you who may not know us and me, my name is Udo Mugu. I am one of the co-founders of Building African Fashion. And Building African Fashion is an organization that was started fairly recently, really with the goal in mind to help drive inclusive growth in Africa's fashion industry, inclusive growth through knowledge sharing, education, which is what we're here for today, to really help those who are doing great things in the industry share their insights with those of us who are also looking to grow our work, grow expertise in various areas of the fashion space. We're also committed to working through collaboration to drive structural change in the industry. We believe that we can do more together when we work together with others than when we are working individually in our silos. So we're really about collaboration, bringing together industry professionals, bringing together organizations to help drive the work and really be a voice for what we need in our industry to drive it forward. Um, and this initiative in particular is driven by our fashion workers team. We have 10 impact areas that we work across, one of which is focused on protecting the rights of fashion workers and artisans in the fashion space. And I can see one of our team members, one of our leadership team members for that initiative is here today, Shola Idowu, who is the country coordinator for Fashion Revolution Nigeria. So without much further ado, I'm going to get us into the program so that you can hear me stop talking and really engage with our speakers today. Um, and as we get into it, we also like to know where people are coming from. If you feel comfortable, please put in the chat your name and just what part of the world you're joining us from today. And if you also feel comfortable, what you do, if you're in the fashion space, if you're not, just introduce yourself briefly to us in the chat. And then for the way today is going to work over the next hour, hour and a half or so, we are going to first hear from our speakers. As I mentioned, they're going to share about their work. We'll give them some time to do that. Then following that, I will lead a Q&A session with them. And during that time, those of you guys in the audience can also feel free to share any questions that you have, any thoughts you may have, either by putting your questions in the chat or just raising your hand, and we'll give you the floor to share your thoughts with us. So with that, let me briefly share our speakers' bios so that we can get acquainted with them as we bring them up to share with us. So first, Dr. Pam Nyawiri, I hope I'm saying that right. Please let me know. Okay, Nyawiri, okay, great. She is a multi-award winning design practitioner working in the field of sustainable design and fashion futures. Dr. Pam Nyongwiri has worked with social design enterprises, offering expertise in business mentoring and solving complex sustainability violations by implementing her theory of care and design, supported by a framework of putting people first. This model foregrounds an approach that acknowledges cultural awareness and ethical considerations of designers, researchers, and organizations working with urban and rural artisan communities, particularly in marginalized areas. Pam is also the co founder and creative director of the award winning brand Van Vanway, which has created an ethical framework of luxury crafted handbags that articulate a strong brand aesthetic based on the preservation of traditional crafts through modern innovation. Van Vanway has become a global fashion philanthropic enterprise, which stands for a social mission that brings economic empowerment to women living in marginalized communities. Dr. Pan, thank you so much. We're happy to have you here today. And then let me introduce Louisa, and then we'll have you guys share with us. Um, Louisa Somalata is the founder and designer behind the brand Hamaji. She graduated with a BA in fashion design from Cape Town Design School, Medisa, in 2015. Hamaji began as her graduate collection project and has since evolved into a thriving brand. Hamaji Studio is a contemporary fashion house based in rural Kenya. The name Hamaji means nomad in coastal Swahili, reflects the brand's essence, drawing inspiration from ancient textile traditions and nomadic craftsmanship while supporting small scale artisans in Africa. The collections are crafted from natural fibers, botanical dyes, handcraft, embroidery, and upcycled vintage textiles. So those are wonderful speakers today. Looking forward again to hearing what they have to share with us. And with that, I will turn the floor over first to Dr. Pam. And then after that, we'll have Louisa to share with us. Dr. Pam, over to you.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Thank you so much for having me on the platform. I'm always very excited to share the work that we do at Vanuvamwe, but also the individual work that I strive to do, not only within the African fashion or creative industry, but also cross-culturally across the globe. So if we can start to just play the video, it's only 39 seconds, I believe. And then we'll put up a PDF which has the title of the theme, which is mirroring what I've been asked to speak about today. Thank you.
Investing in community development is everyone's business. There is immense power when people with similar values get together to work toward the same goals. Good practices and developmental impact is impossible without fostering leaders who are committed to respectful practices. Whatever turf you stand, you must strive to be transparent always by building brands that allow difficult questions and honest conversations to be discussed so that we can encourage positive transformation in communities. Humanity is more important than profit.
Thank you so much. It's important that I have the PDF so you can see what I am going to talk about today, particularly what I'm reining into today.
My apologies. Let me try and get that up for you.
Thank you so much.
Right.
Perhaps I can start while you're having a look at it, but just leading on from the video that we have just watched, which was only 39 seconds. I hope you were able to hear the gist of what I was trying to say. But in summary, relationships matter more to me than any status symbol. And I always want to be able to pursue them no matter what it is. And I talk about this in the context of artisan communities because this has essentially become my life. So I'm just going to go back to 2015 when I had the opportunity to have my first collaborative design event. Initially, I would say with a community that was based in Ecuador. Um, I did not speak Spanish. I still do not speak Spanish, but I ended up with a community in Ecuador in a little village called Salinas for 4 months. And so this was day in, day out. And the whole aim of me being there was to collaboratively come up with a luxury collection using traditional crafts within that environment. So when you enter a community, usually as a designer, and I speak for myself at that time, there's always a whole lot of airs because a lot of the times you go in because we actually think that we are the ones with the knowledge. And that's exactly the kind of mentality I went into this village with, that I was the one that was telling them what to do. I'm the one who came in with the money, and they were going to do exactly what I said I would tell them to do. But unfortunately, my journey in that village didn't turn out to be. And I'm so grateful because I think that my experience then at the time is really what has molded what I have turned my brand into at the moment and what I have become as a design practitioner within the African design and creative community. And so the first 2 weeks, nothing happened because I would go to this place that had been allocated where I was supposed to meet the artisans to be able to discuss with someone, of course, who spoke English. It was the only man who spoke English in the community, but no one turned up. And after 2 weeks, I was getting very frustrated. And I questioned this guy and I said, I've been here 2 weeks. The artisans don't turn up at all in this place. I'm the one who's bringing the money. I don't need to be here. I am here to teach them something. And he said to me, your approach is wrong. And until you get your approach right, the artisans for the next 4 months while you're here will not turn up. So I said to him, please speak to me. What do you mean? And he said, you have to ensure that there's a connectivity of trust and also honoring the environment in which you are living in. And I said, okay, tell me more. What does that mean? And he said, we've had designers in the past who come in this place, they come in, they do what they need to do, and they go. So as time has gone on, you find that the community in itself does not trust any new people who come into the community. And so my idea, as I was speaking to my husband at the time, I remember he said to me, why do you not join their activities? For example, if they wake up in the morning and go to the market with them and see what happens. So for the next 2 weeks, before this artisan community even thought about joining me at this place where I was supposed to meet them, I woke up at 4 in the morning and we used to go and milk cows, take the milk to the cheese factory, exchange the milk for money, go back into the community, bathe the children, getting them ready for school, cook the lunch, And then they would go on about their normal chores. And I would go back to that place and wait for the artisans to come, and they never came. So for 2 weeks, I did that day in, day out. And by the second week, which would have been 4 weeks now, me being in Ecuador, I was starting to get tired. And one day, as I was thinking about going back to phone my sponsors to tell them that I don't think this collaboration was going to work, I saw a crowd of women walking towards me. And they had this guy, the only guy who spoke English, and they said, "How do you want to start?" So that was a light bulb moment for me. I'm talking to you like this because I want to talk about practical things that happen in the community. I can come and use flowery academic language, but I want you to be able to see my heart, to see where I was at and where I am right now. We had a beautiful collaboration to begin with. We managed to get these bags into, I don't know if any of you know a store called Top Shop. I understand that I think they're starting up again, 2025, but we that was our first retail on Oxford Street in England, and these bags sold out, and we were on such a roll. Everything was happening so quickly. We won an award for the most sustainable collection. But what I didn't realize was this was only happening to me, but it was not happening to the people that I'd worked with. A year later, I took a trip back to Ecuador to see how the community was. And when I got there, my heart was breaking. I realized that I had left the community in a worse off situation than I had first arrived. I started to have self reflections. And one of the things I realized was when I went into the community, I had a saviorship attitude. So I get there and you promise them a lot of things. You're going to get so much money from this collaboration. Your children are going to go to university. You're going to build all these amazing homes. And had I done that? No. And so, having a conversation with myself, I realized that I had violated the community in itself. And all this narrative that I spoke about, ethical fashion, sustainable fashion, were all lies. It was a lie, and I was living a lie. And I was assuming my career in fashion a lie. And at that time, I had to take a step back. And I promised myself that I would never, ever design a collection until I had a foundation set, a sustainable foundation, but also implemented collaborative policies that actually worked for the community. So I went back and I was thinking about how to do this. And I ended up excruciatingly putting myself through 3.5 years of a PhD degree. Um, the PhD was really for myself. I felt like at one point I felt like I was punishing myself, but I wasn't. I wanted to learn. I wanted to do a research based on my own experience, and an experience as well, which I had now finally come to learn was an experience of many, many designers. Perhaps I'm even talking to someone here now who's been in that situation where you go, you work with the community, and then you leave, and then you never know what happens. You've promised them so many things, and that never happened. So I ended up completing my PhD, and my PhD really was based on a framework which was so much aligned to my experience in Ecuador. I know that most artisan communities projects are not sustainable due to unsustainable implementation strategies in non-effective collaborations. And that is the truth. Sometimes it's a truth that we do not speak, we do not really speak about. But this PhD was just based on a simple collaborative design model for the sustainability of social innovation in artisan communities. And I particularly was looking at rural artisan communities or communities within marginalized areas. And this framework was based on putting people first. And it was the idea of me going into a community and putting in place an exit strategy which meant that It was a plan, not at the end, but at the beginning, to be transparent with the community on how we were going to work, how are we going to do it from the beginning, and how were they going to be after I left. Not any of that saviorship attitude or reliance on me at all, or going in with a chip on my shoulder, but like really, really transparent. And also it involved the awareness of cultural patterns and the ethical considerations as well. I realized that a lot of the times we go into communities without actually understanding any cultural awareness. And this is also with even African communities. It doesn't mean that if I'm from Zimbabwe, I can go to Nigeria and implement the same thing. I have to really, really understand the cultural patterns of that community. And even if you are a designer from Nigeria or a designer from Zimbabwe and you're still working within your country, you still have to understand the cultural patterns of those people in that place. And that is where relationship starts. I think we only go into communities thinking about creating, about designing, about making, and yet we jump all the really important steps that mean something to other people. And then the other thing as well that I was very, very much aware was this idea of ethical considerations. You know, when people are going in and out of communities, taking pictures without asking for permission, using certain language which may be considered derogatory in that community. All those little things, I was nitpicking on all those things because it it was an experience that I had had, but also understanding the implications associated with potential um, friendships that might come, because you can't just go into a community as a rigid person. Most likely you're going to make friendships, but also you need to understand the boundaries in which you step, and the boundaries in which you put, not only for yourself but also for the artisan community. Another thing as well, which would be the third thing, was ownership. That's one of the things that I realized was so important. And this is what makes our brand really successful, because the artisans are not our workers. They're not artisans, they are my partners. They are our partners. And from the beginning, as we train them, as we start to implement them with Vanovamwe processes, the one thing that we tell them is, this is your business too. I always say that Vanovamwe is a community business. It's not a legacy that I am creating for my children or creating for my family or for my relatives. This is a community legacy. I always am very transparent about their ownership of the brand. Their names may not be on our on our business paperwork, but indeed they have an ownership of the brand. And one of the things that I realized was, when people believe that they have a piece of something that you are doing, even the way that they work is different. Even the way that they project is different. It's just the same as all of you here, whether you have businesses or you're still in education, there's a way that you protect something that you're working on. And I have to say that that is the kind of attitude, and that is the kind of attitude we've built with Vanovamwe, to ensure that artisans understand that, yes, this is their bread and butter, but also this is a love project for all of us. So moving on, after I did my PhD, it had passed, I think, 6 years before I had created absolutely anything. And at the time, I started talking to my husband, who's my co-founder, and I said to him, I would like for us to start designing again, because I think we have nailed it and we know exactly what we're doing. We did this framework for ourselves. So it was during COVID 2020, we decided to reach out back to Zimbabwe to work with the community. And we just put out a call out looking for women who would potentially like to, who had or an understanding of macrame and who wanted to work with us. We were so blessed. We managed to find a few women, 10 to start with, And all this was done on WhatsApp because, of course, it was during COVID. And to begin, the very first thing that I did was implement the exit strategy. Even on WhatsApp, I explained it in my vernacular language. I was always doing voice notes, really with so much intent. I was so intentional because I did not want them to have any ideas otherwise from the work that we were doing. After a year of sampling, and that's how long it took for our sampling, because one, they didn't understand our way of working as the designs. If you have seen one of my bags, you will understand what I mean. They said, will we ever get money from this? Because we don't understand these designs. And I said to them, I want to teach you what luxury is. So it was not only for us, but I wanted to teach them as well for their own personal selves, because that's another thing that we encourage in Van Vamwe. They don't not only work for us, but I thrive so much in seeing them creating their own platforms and their own businesses and implementing everything that I have taught them also in their own work. And so in 2021, we officially created the foremost, I call it foremost, so anyone is welcome to correct me, but the foremost macrame community in Africa, where to date we employ 170 artisans. 50% of them are ex-prisoners. So this is also a love project alongside a love project for me, because we wanted to be able to have women who had been shunned away from community, to welcome them in and say, we are able to provide you with love, not only love, with friendship, but also with the ability to make your own money, to be able to feed your own families, whether you've been in prison for 5 years, for 10 years, for 20 years, it didn't matter. And what we did in implementing this, we made sure that we're working with a large group of women who have different characters and personalities that are more likely to clash. And so we asked them to choose their own leaders. So they chose the people that represent them. And please note that this is very, very important, because when you're working with people, or even if you remember when you were in high school, I don't know if you went to schools where there were prefects or class monitors, when somebody is singled out in a class, there's some form of feeling. You feel some type of way, like I haven't been chosen. But when it's the collective and the class come together and they say, we want Pam to represent us, it feels good, because the choice has been made by the people that you're going to represent. And then what I went on to do as well is we ensured that the heads of Vanovamwe in Zimbabwe also had the opportunity to train for leadership. I think we talk a lot about leadership, but when you are a leader, it's not about controlling. And this is one thing that we've so successfully done. It really has been about allocating the work. And so I only have 15 minutes, and I think that's past. But just moving fast forward to where we are now. Last year in March, while I came from a program that was happening in Paris, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. I woke up paralyzed in the legs and in the hands, and it's not something that you ever anticipate as a business owner. And I want to speak to you about this because it's really, really important in understanding successful collaboration. And the one thing that I thought at the time was, okay, let's see how this year is going to go. My husband had to look after me during this period, so they couldn't have been any up and down going to Zim, and there was not much communication with the artisans in themselves. But I want to let you know that last year was the year that we made so much revenue without me being able to do anything. I was lying flat on my back. I was going to rehab every single day. My husband was looking after me here. We had calls with the artisans maybe once a month, but they knew how to create purchase orders. They knew how to ship, how to look after the retailers, and our revenue at the end of the year was a 7-figure seven-figure revenue, not because I was there managing, but because I had these amazing, amazing group of women that I respected their cultural patterns. I had ethical consideration, and I told them that while Vanovamwe was founded by us, it also belonged to them. And at the end of the year, I was surprised when our accounts were being done, and I thought we started back in 2020 where we were in 2024. That had never happened. Yes, we were doing very well, but leaving the artisans to run the business independently without me behind their backs, or even saying, oh, has the cord been made? Have you bought it? Where are the receipts for A, B, C, D? And even as the accounts were being done, everything was up to scratch, to the last cent, to the last dollar. You ask me again, how do you do how do you do a collaboration with artisan communities? I am just convinced that a better way to improve conditions in formal economies really is by giving artisans the opportunity to develop their own businesses and their business models within your business and also outside. And these businesses should combine social and economic tools that will effectively create platforms of social innovation, which will lead to effective sustainability and collaboration. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pam. That was very insightful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for the honesty, for just sharing so much with us. And as I said, we'll come back after Louisa has shared with us her own brand story and her work. And then we'll take some questions and more insights as well. Thank you again. So Louisa, over to you.
Wow, well, thank you so much, Pam. What an inspiring and insightful knowledge and honesty. It's really, yeah, what an honor to listen to you speak. I feel very inspired by your story and all the truth that you speak. Let me try and share my screen. It says the host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Please go ahead. I think you should be able to share.
Okay, can you guys see my screen? I don't think it's sharing yet. Okay, here we go. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Okay, so good evening, everyone. My name is Louisa Sommerlatte, and I'm the founder and designer behind my brand Hamaji. Just a little bit of introduction. I studied fashion design at Fidisa in Cape Town, and Hamaji was my graduate collection project that I then decided to pursue. Coming from a family of entrepreneurs, it felt like the right thing to do. Hamaji means a nomad, a wanderer, someone on the go in coastal Swahili. And I was very inspired by artisanal design and nomadic craftsmanship and ancient textile traditions. So for me, the name encapsulated my mission as a designer. I then finished university and moved back to Kenya to pursue my business. And this is where I was first faced with the challenges of obviously starting your own business. It's a one-woman show. But yeah, the problems arose in finding a sustainable, reliable supply chain of textiles that were also traceable, finding out where are they from, who grows the cotton, who are the artisans, or who are the manufacturers creating these textiles. And this led me to start creating my own, and start embellishing all of my designs in my own way. So this is what really then drove the business. So Hamaji is an African designer collection created around preserving ancient textile traditions and nomadic craftsmanship to empower small-scale artisans in Africa and India. Working with local artisans, our collections embody a fusion of contemporary and traditional design. With people and the planet at our forefront, we seek to maintain artisanal craft whilst designing with local materials and upcycling vintage textiles to create a circular flow of design ingenuity. Okay, so there's two types of artisanal partnerships. One, obviously, being artisanal organizations that foster artisans and designers and act as a platform where artisans can go and present their work and be connected to a wider community of designers. This is obviously then monitored by the organization, it's quality control, and it's a sort of very well managed system. And then you get independent artisans, which are individual artisans that don't work for a an organization, but are skilled individual artisans. So artisanal organizations in Kenya, just briefly, that two that come to the top of my head. There's one, Artisan Fashion. They are based in Nairobi, and they connect esteemed luxury brands with artisans in Africa. And their focus is mainly on accessories, baskets, jewelry, and bags. And then there's Wildlife Works, and their mission is to develop market-based solutions for wildlife conservation that drive measurable, sustainable development to local communities. And one aspect of this organization is they have a small garment factory. So this is where we get all of our garments produced. They are the first carbon neutral garment factory in the world, protecting wildlife, community, and forests with all of their proceeds. And they are based in rural Kenya in a place called Voi, which is sort of neighbors Tsavo National Park. So it's a very remote rural part of Kenya. At Hamaji, however, we work mostly with independent artisanal designers or independent artisans. I would say most of our collaborations are with independent artisans, and we focus on human-centric design and artisan-centric design. So I just wanted to introduce our first artisans that we work with, Beatrice and Stella. They are our neighbors here on the foothills of Mount Kenya, near Naramoru. And they are two sister-in-laws. Beatrice used to work for my grandmother 30 years ago. And my grandmother had a small knitting business, and Beatrice and her would sit there and knit jerseys together and sell them. So everything started from very sort of small scale business, cottage industry business. But I wanted to revive this project, so I reached out to them, and they were, of course, very keen to revive their knitting, because otherwise they work in the field, and it's difficult as women to have your own independent source of income. So we revived this business. And now I do all the design work. My mother helps me with the pattern making, because knitting patterns are a lot more complex than garment pattern construction. So it's a really, a family-run business. and then Stella and Beatrice knit our beautiful designs into realization. And we work with hand spun cotton and hand spun silk. And then we going to our next artisans that we work with. We work with embroidery artisans in Ngara in Nairobi. And another challenge that I faced was finding sustainable textiles. So I went to the secondhand markets and we started upcycling a lot with old curtains that we found and old bed covers. And we started making these magnificent jackets and coats out of them, and working with, again, the independent artisans in Ngara. And we would spend many afternoons with them, choosing the colors and the motifs and sketching the designs and making samples. And it's always such a fun process because it is so much part of the creative process, but it's also just so stimulating and inspiring, being able to listen and hear what they have to say and what their design interests are. So these are very much collaborative projects with the artisans in Ngara. And then we also worked with a women's collective in northern Kenya. These women are from the Samburu tribe. They live in a very remote part of Kenya, so it was definitely came with its challenges, because most of them don't have access to phones or phone reception. So it was many hot, dusty, bumpy drives going into northern Kenya to meet them. And we together developed this flat beading technique, which they were not familiar with. So instead of beading onto leather, you're just, it's just the flat bead in itself with no backing. So we created for our Summer 25 collection these beautiful beaded tops that were created by these Samburu women. And then last but not least, all of our fabrics are hand loomed on traditional hand looms in Nairobi, and we develop all of our own weaves with a women's organization based in Nairobi. So we've got this handloom lace design that we developed, and this, you can see the final product. We also developed, different striped motifs, but all of our fabrics, or at least most of our fabrics, are woven on a traditional loom, again, collaborating with artisans here. And then we also work with Indian partners. I know this is mainly focusing on African artisans and partnerships, but I did also want to mention the Indian partners that we work with and the artisanal collaborations that we do here. So, Akane is a plant dyeing studio run by two sisters in Mumbai, and they botanically dye everything with old the leftover flower waste from all the temples. So here pictured botanically dyed tops on our beautiful handloom silk. And then we also work with a block printing company in Jaipur, where they put all of our prints into realization. And I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with block printing, but each motif is carved out of wood, and each color is then a new block print, and it's a century-old tradition of printing. We also work with a women's collective in the Himalayas called Kulvi Wims, and they hand spin and weave indigenous Himalayan wool and create these beautiful coats for us that we designed with them. And all of the wool is botanically dyed. And then we also work with with the Woven Fabric Studio. They are based in Berhampur in West Bengal, also a very remote part of India. And they hand spin and hand loom all of their own silk from it's mulberry silk, also known as pea silk. So yeah, that is a sort of brief overview of all the artisans that we work with, and this is just a fun little review of our collections, so, and just the impact of, you know, each garment. So we have here the Cantha puffer jacket. 100 kgs of vintage textiles were repurposed to create not obviously the individual jacket, but the whole entire collection with these jackets. Then we have the beaded top. We supported 2 women communities with 56 individual women. And then we have 1 knitted skirt, 20 kgs of hand spun silk, and 4 artisans supported. Tie front dress, 8 artisans supported, hand wood block printed with eco-friendly dyes. And then we have the lace jumpsuit, 100 meters of handloom fabric, 6 artisans supported with 26 beneficiaries. And then just a little impact report for our Hamaji Spring Summer 25. 6 communities were engaged, 86 artisans involved, and 327 beneficiaries. So this is basically, like I said, just a small overview of all the different individual artisans that we work with to create our collections. And we are forever evolving and discovering new communities and individual creatives to collaborate with. And it is the most inspiring and fun project, and what really drives me and Hamaji. And most of the collaborations are from individuals that I've met and who I've gone to go and visit in their communities, wherever they are, whether it's in, you know, very remote and rural parts of Kenya or in India. And I think that's where the magic happens, is when you as an individual go there and spend time with, whether it's communities or individual people, and, you know, really spend 2 weeks there and, you know, eat with them and sleep with them and just really get invested in the lives that they are living, and to discover what you can create together, and how you can make this partnership work in the best way. So thank you very much, and yeah, here for any questions.
Thank you so much, Louisa. That was wonderful, very insightful. Thank you as well, Pam. As I mentioned, thank you for the authentic sharing. I know that I've just absorbed so much from just the two of you in the few minutes that you've shared. I can probably spend hours asking you guys questions, but we don't have hours, so we'll try and keep the questions to the brief few minutes that we have left. For those also who are here with us today, feel free to put any questions that you may have for them, any comments in the chat. And also, if you just want to speak yourself, like I said previously, feel free to raise your hand and we'll call on you to speak. But before I start with the questions, I just want to acknowledge a couple of the comments that were already put in. First, I want to acknowledge Fatika, who is here as well. Is she still here? Yes, she is. From Fashion Revolution Kenya, the country coordinator for Fashion Revolution Kenya. Thank you for joining us for this today. She and I recently connected, so happy that she was able to join for this wonderful discussion. And also a comment from Sahir, who is joining us from New York. Welcome. And has worked with women in India and is interested in learning how brands interact with artisans globally. So hopefully, as we go through the conversation, you can hear more about that, and feel free as well to just, as I said, ask any additional questions you may have. So with that, I want to start off with some questions, both for Louisa and Dr. Pam. You guys have both shared so wonderfully with us today. And I think the first question somebody may have after hearing what you shared and being inspired. I'm very inspired after hearing the success that you guys have both had. Is how do you even start if you want to work with artisans? How can one start? How can one get started on this journey? I know Dr. Pam, you shared your experience finding artisans in Ecuador and eventually Zimbabwe, and some of the things that you keep in mind or the practices that you put into place when trying to engage artisans. Can you kind of expound a bit more on that? And for somebody who just wants to start, who's just getting started, how can they get started on this journey of engaging artisans?
Okay, thank you so much. I think that now in 2025, I'm just thinking about back in 2011. And also, like Louise said, she graduated in 2015. I actually graduated in 2014. I went back to university, abandoning another career that I had to study fashion, and it wasn't. And I think maybe Louise will also maybe connect with this. It wasn't the study of fashion, but it was understanding how fashion worked at home and also globally. That was the thing with me. And at that time, I remember there weren't so many organizations that were on the ground that were working with artisans. And in fact, all this that we are both talking about was not implemented at all. So there was very much the whole idea of violation that I'm telling you about that was in place. Now I think there are more stricter policies, and also, there's social media where people are cancelled. So people are a little bit more aware. And why I am driving this to the now in 2025 is a lot of organizations. For example, there's an organization called Nest that actually has a whole platform of artisans in globally and in Africa as well, where you could reach out depending on what it is that you were interested in, whether it was weaving of baskets, whether it was macrame, whatever it is. There are so many platforms now that you can approach, and of course you have to do research to really understand who's behind it and what the intention is. But that's where I would say start from. One thing again that I want to say is it's not always easy to work with artisan communities because the ideologies are so different, and also expectations may be very different. So it's always really important to be able um, to reach out to a community that's, I'll call it professional. And I think Louise as well will understand what I mean, because you can hear that somebody has the ability to do crochet and you go to them and it's a totally different idea, and it just doesn't fit. So sometimes you may have to search for various communities before you actually find a fit. So it's just one of those things where it's a lot of research work, and also just trying to find if there are communities that are part of already formed community, or like Louise, that she also works with independent communities. So that's where I would start from. I think when I started, it was because I won an award, and then the award gave me a choice to either work with artisans in Morocco or in Ecuador. And so I thought it might be interesting to have that cross-cultural collaboration and work. So that that was set for me. And then when I found the macrame community, these were just people from all over Zimbabwe, in, of course, in an area, in a controlled area. So, for example, the capital city, Harare. And I just put a call out. And in fact, when we started with those 10, there were some that dropped out because they were not right for what we were doing. So it really is just putting in the work, but also approaching perhaps design communities like myself or Louise's, who already have been working with artisans already. For example, if somebody is interested in making macrame bags, they could use our community to do that, because essentially then they're not just doing Vanova. When there's something that we already do, they're bringing in as well more work that is now just focused on the artisans, individual businesses, rather than, the revenue coming into Vanuvamwe. That's what I would suggest.
Thank you so much. Lisa, do you have anything to add, or?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I fully agree with Pam. I think it's, these things are never easy, and it's, you really have to invest the time and energy in, taking the time to discover these people and spend time and, see what their quality is like. I think there's a lot of trial and error that goes into these collaborations, and it's not just something that you can like quickly sign up to do. There's obviously these days there are a lot of bigger organizations that foster artisanal design, and they have big teams and sort of quality control and things like that. But of course, these things they come with a price. So I think if it really depends where you are in your business. But for me, half of the fun is also discovering these individual artisans and communities and spending time with them instead of being handed it on a silver platter. So that's all part of the creative process. But yes, these days, I think, Instagram is an incredible platform if it's used correctly. And I have found a lot of communities through Instagram. So yeah, there's definitely, platforms where you can discover artisans through these days.
And I see Sir here, you have your hand up. Before I call on you, just to kind of follow up a bit further on this question of how do people get started. If you can also just share a little bit about the challenges that you may have had as you were identifying the communities or individuals that you wanted to work with. If you can share a little bit with us about that, kind of some of the struggles that you may have had along the way.
Yeah, I think with with selling products, I mean, whether it's locally or internationally, is quality control, and that is a standard that you have to maintain, even if it is artisanal craft. And I definitely think there are challenges there because things, because it's artisanal, varying from which artisan does the production, it could vary hugely, whether it's if you're doing knitting and one knitter has a bigger knit or a looser knit, it's like so there's lots of challenges I think that you will face with sort of quality control, but with time these things get ironed out. But yeah, I think just maintaining quality is a huge thing to be able to sell internationally.
I think one of the other challenges that we came across was skill development and innovation resistance. Some artisans really hesitate sometimes to just adopt traditional techniques that are transferred to modern aesthetics. So I know I've experienced that. It's kind of like a back and forth, but also having the understanding that it's just such a powerful and beautiful exchange of something that they possibly got from, I don't know, 10th generation. It's being passed down. And so sometimes there's a preciousness to it and a resistance to actually implement the modern innovation. And the modern innovation is not per se to change the traditional craft in itself. But I think as well, sometimes it depends which brand. We don't, our brand is not really trend focused. But even though we say we're not trend focused, we also have to understand what's out there to be able to understand our consumer needs as well. So while we don't prescribe to it, when you take the concept of trends and then modern innovation into traditional crafts, that can be very problematic where there's a lot of pushback But through training programs, and for example ours, we've got a macrame skills training program that we do after every quarter. And also we do a lot of residencies. I was just looking at the screen. I think I'm actually going to the same screen printing community that you use, Louise, in Japan, in India, in June. I'm going to spend 4 weeks there. And again, that's another collaboration, which is for bridging culture through design. Just that idea of bringing an idea from Africa and then combining it in this place to see what it is that we can create. So, the training programs that can actually help artisans to refine their craft at the same time while they're preserving their authenticity of their craft that they've already been doing for centuries.
Great, thank you both. Okay, Sahir, over to you. I'll let you ask your question. Oh, since you're muted.
Classic. I just wanted to thank you so much for your time. Everything you said really resonated with me. I did my master's in fashion studies where I concentrated on artisan communities and activist fashion. But I didn't really get it until I went to India to work with Saheli women. So we do production in Jodhpur and in Rajasthan. And everything you said was just so spot on. Like it reminded me of the ladies at Saheli Women and all their sassiness and grit. And just the fact that the products always come out better when the client really involves themselves in the women's like daily lives. Which was nice to hear that. I did have a question for Pam actually. I was wondering, and sorry, I'm on a slight time crunch, so this is a quick question, but I was wondering, when you did the open call, did you initiate it through WhatsApp originally, or was that more like field work and you were on the ground, or like you had some point of connection? And then, sorry, I lastly also just wanted to say, while I was in India, I also worked with Kulvi Wims for a few weeks. Miss it so much, and miss seeing Indra auntie on the handloom. She's so speedy. But yeah, it's so nice to hear that you worked with them. Thank you both.
Okay, thank you so much for that question. So as I mentioned, when we did our call out, we were now in the thick of COVID. This was after March 2020. So we used WhatsApp as a medium. I did reach out to a few people who live in Zimbabwe already. My sister is based in Zimbabwe. And I basically said, do you know any groups on WhatsApp? Because people have a lot of different groups for different things where you can just put out this message. And so she was on a group for cooking women, actually. People were sharing recipes throughout COVID, and she put out this call out, and this young lady came forward and said, oh, my mom does macrame. She's been doing it for so many years, but she just does it at home. So we got the contact for this woman who then said, oh, I've got a group of women that I know. And she introduced them. And then when they came forward, they said, oh, we actually have the person who trained us all. We would like to invite her. So at the end of it, we had these 10 women that were just, recommending each other. And I think Louise mentioned social media as a very powerful tool. So now, you could, almost everybody, their auntie, their granny, their child uses social media. So it could be Facebook or Instagram, where you can just put out a call out on your page, or ask people to reshare, or even give someone like me where we can reshare your information. But also while on that, next week, myself and some designers are actually starting a platform called 54 Faces, and it is just based on our love. Again, it's another love project on preservation of traditional crafts and working with artisans just within Africa, but doing cross-cultural collaboration. So when I say I'm going to India, this is actually our first project within 54 faces. So platforms like that as well, reaching out to see what it is that we can do for you. So it's non-profit, so we are doing research within Africa, within cross-cultural communities to really find professional artisans that potential designers work with. But then again, you know, as I was speaking, I was talking about all these policies that I implemented into a framework for myself. And these are the same policies and frameworks we are extending to 54 Faces, so that designers, social enterprises know and understand how to work with these communities, that it's just not an exploitive moment, or it's just not a moment of creating a collection, then you go away. What happens when you leave? They have to continue living as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for those questions, Sahir, and thank you, Pam and Louisa. I see that we have one other question in the chat. I think you may have answered it a little bit, Louisa. It says, what are challenges you have faced selling your products internationally, and how have you overcome them? So if you want to take that on first. Read it one more time. What challenges have you faced selling your products internationally, and how have you overcome them?
Do you want me to answer that question again?
Yeah, you can start, Louise, and then I can finish after you.
Sorry.
It looks like she's frozen.
I'll just carry on. So I think the Made in Africa brand has always been very problematic on the global platform or on the international platform. Again, because it was to do with issues with quality control. Going back even just 10 years, there was just a lot of discrepancy in buying the Made in Africa, because the global world saw it as maybe something you just buy as a curio when you go on holiday and you're passing through an airport, and then you buy a key ring or you know, a piece of like a scarf, and then that's it, and you don't think anything of it. But I'm so proud to say that Africa is probably the most innovative continent of all, and we have really pulled our boots up. We've listened to the feedback. It's been a very painful experience to listen to the feedback, but the feedback has been true, and we've implemented. And I say we have because I speak on behalf of other designers. I'm also part of a group of designers from Canix, which are sponsored by Afrixim Bank. And what Afrixim Bank has done is it has brought groups of African designers on the global platform, so that we're able to take our products to trade shows at Paris Fashion Week, recently New York Fashion Week, Tokyo Fashion Week, and there are actually some at the moment who are in China at the Fashion Week there, to take our products there, so that we are able to have a face-to-face interaction with the retailers, because we are the ones who can tell our stories best. And also they're able to see our products close up and be able to judge for themselves. And it's such a proud moment that we go up there, and we have now designers in Nostrums, in, you know, in all these big departmental stores globally selling their product, because we listen to the feedback. So it has been difficult, but I think opening up maybe from 2022 coming on to now, we have seen a whole lot of, and percentages going higher and higher, of African designers who are able to sell without effort to retailers. But also the diasporan community is starting to recognize that it's not about the Gucci bag or the Fendi bag, but it's about connecting with your heritage, with your cultural heritage, and also it's endearing to carry something that is handcrafted, but also that is so authentic and has a lot of meaning in it.
Thank you. Louisa, do you want to share a little bit, or?
I think Pam has covered most of it. I would say, yeah, I mean, there's platforms where you can get recognized. I think right now there's such a focus on African design. There's and there are lots of platforms that you can sign up to. For example, I was part of the ethical fashion initiative. It was a 2-year accelerator program, and we were at Paris Fashion Week, and we got promoted to do a scholarship at Polymorda University. So there are these platforms for African designers to be internationally recognized and sort of elevated to a certain standard and level, because I think just being an independent artisan wherever you are, whether it's in Africa or not, it's always hard to be recognized, and where do you start? So to just levitate your designs and have a platform to be shown to the rest of the world.
Thank you so much. So we're gonna look to start rounding up now. So for those of you who are in the audience, this is the last call for any questions, any comments before we wrap up in the next few minutes. Again, this has been such a great conversation. I'll probably reach out to both of you and ask more questions. I just don't want to keep everyone on here for hours. But just as a last question from me, for the artisan, I guess, industry or artisan sector in Africa, what do you think? What do you kind of see as the future? What do you think maybe that we need to do to get more people engaged, to ensure that our artisans are continuing to grow and thrive, and that we don't lose some of the cultural heritage and historical traditions and practices that we have on the continent?
Okay, I think African.
Like to see done to help kind of improve that.
I think African artisans have the potential to redefine global fashion by bringing authenticity, sustainability, and some form of cultural depth to the industry in itself. I'm just thinking right now that there's a revolution of shaping new luxury narratives. So global fashion is really, really shifting towards handcrafted, like I said before, handcrafted, ethical, and culturally rich pieces. And African artisans can really be in a position to position themselves at the forefront of this movement by offering, unique, high quality craftsmanship that is almost like a rival with mainstream luxury brands. And another thing as well would be driving sustainability and ethical production. I think as the world moves away from fast fashion, artisans that are particularly skilled in traditional low impact techniques will be very, very essential. And like I spoke about the 54 Faces platform, one of the things that we're trying to do is to provide a platform for showcasing these skills from artisans, making slow fashion more desirable and accessible.
Thank you. And then 54 Faces, is that for 54 countries in Africa?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a tall order. We've been doing this work for the last 3 years, and finally, in next week, we launch the website.
Looking
Yeah,
forward
I'll definitely be in touch with you.
to it. And Louisa, your response? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think just adding on, it's, a lot of it is also about awareness, and educating people. There's still obviously a huge following of fast fashion, and I also understand that it's not, artisanal design is not attainable to everyone. It comes at a price. But I think, yeah, a lot of it is about awareness and education and promoting and being open about it on your, social media platforms, and educating, yeah, through your design practices and showing people, look, this is what I do. This is my design business. These are the people that we support, and really promote it. And people are really becoming excited, and everyone wants to be part of this big change and movement. And people want to, see the change that it is creating in communities, and being able to watch people being, promoted, and just, livelihoods being supported, and it's a great way forward.
Great. Thank you so much, Louisa. So I think with that, we are going to bring this session to a close. Just want to thank you both. Wanted to make sure I wasn't muted. Wanted to thank you both for just taking the time, first of all, to prepare, for honoring our invitation to for this session and being a part of it, and just spending the time that you took today to share with us. We look forward to continuing to follow your brands, follow your successes, including 54 Faces, seeing how that launches as it launches, and also following the work that you're doing with that, Pam. So thank you so much again. I've really enjoyed spending this time with you, and also want to thank everyone that stayed on to the end. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. We recorded the conversation. We'll share with each and every one of you so that you can go back and rewatch, and also for those who might have left a little bit early so that they can also catch what they may have missed. So thank you once again. This, as I mentioned, is the third that we've had in this series of threads of collaboration. And we're going to have one more next month. And after that, we're going to put together a report of everything that was shared, all the insights, all the wonderful insights, and make that available to everyone that has attended over the past few months of this series, so that we can all learn together and gain insights and continue to help support and build out the artisan community in Africa. So thank you again, Pam and Louisa. And I also want to say special thank you actually to our intern, Stacy, who has been great in organizing these sessions. This is actually her last week with us. So just want to recognize her again and just say thank you, Stacy, for all the work, being so diligent to reach out to our speakers and follow up with them and put everything together for these sessions. So grateful to you for that. And of course to Shola, who's one of our team members who has stayed on to the end. Thank you as well. And to everybody else as well. Thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your day. And please feel free to reach out to us if you need anything, any questions, any guidance or anything, and we're more than happy to be of assistance. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.